Today we will be doing a Mitzvah Shem Daf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph. We are on the fourth line from the top of the page. So, what we are essentially discussing is that there was a number of klolim which we learned in Daf Mem Vavam base about how to pasken if you have the machloikis between, mainly they were talking about Talmidei Rabbi Akiva. Yeah, mainly they were about Talmidei Rabbi Akiva and the machloikis. So which how do you pasken when you have machloikis between the different Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva? There's also mention of Rabbi, but anyway. So there was these klolim. Then we had Rabbi Mishashir. Rabbi Mishashir says, "Nah, sorry. These klolim were said by Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan established a series of klolim, of which way we should pass it. Rabbi Mishashir says that he doesn't agree with all these klolim, And now the Gemara now is bringing different proofs where we see that we don't follow the klolim which were mentioned in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, and we go to different prices. So far, we've had, I think, 2 rayas, and the Gemara sort of responded by saying, there's no proof because all these the 2 cases where her ruling did not fit in with the klolim which Rabbi Yochanan established, that doesn't matter because Rabbi Yochanan was speaking about in the absence of an established or psak halacha where it was concluded the halacha is like one of them. Then it could be the halacha. It doesn't have to follow the klolim. But Rabbi Yochanan was saying in those cases where there is no established halacha, so there's no established halacha. That's why he gave us this klolim. Which one of the Tanoim we should follow? Just to point out that Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Huda, Rabbi Shimon, and Rabbi Yosef, these are all Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva. So now we have another contradiction to the klal. Snan, Hamaniach as Beisei, sorry, Hamaniach as Beisei, v'holach lishbeis bez ir acheres. So we have the din of Eruv Ktseres, that people living together and that they have a communal area, so they're not permitted to carry in the communal chotzer area unless they make an Eruv. So then when they make an Eruv, so then all the Chatzeres and even the individual Chatzeres and the communal area is all considered belonging to all of them. It's all one large communal area. So once it becomes one large communal area through the concept of Eruv Ktseres, then we are permitted to carry. Now, what happens if one of the people are not there and is not able to be to agree to be mishtatef in the Eruv? So if one of the people is not there, can you make the Eruv without that person being there? So the Gemara says, then the Mishnah, Hamaniach as Beisei. So a person who leaves his house and he goes to a different city. So it doesn't make a difference. And the people have not made the Eruv. Eruv has not been done for all the neighbors. So Echad Nochri Echad Yisrael. So whether it's a guy or a yid, so it's they can't make an Eruv. Since he's not here, so therefore, and he has a partnership in the communal area. So even though since he's not here, so he can't participate in the Eruv, and therefore it's usher and he can't make an Eruv. What's the point of Echad Nochri ve'Echad Yisrael? We will see in a minute. This is the Rabbi Meir. That's the opinion of Rabbi Meir, that any neighbor who leaves, if is not here, any one of the neighbors, then they can't make, and the Eruv has not yet been done, they can't make it. Rabbi Yehuda says Einay Oyser. Rabbi Yehuda says that even if the person is not here, so it doesn't answer, because since the person is not here and therefore he is not going to be using the communal area. So if he is not going to be using the communal area, so then the fact that he has an ownership, that's not irrelevant. But the poil, since he's not actually going to be using it, so when to the din of Erich Tzeres, we don't have to take into account his ownership, because it's in practice he's not going to be actually using it at the area. Rabbi Yosef says Nochri Ois Yisrael in Ois. Says if the guy left the city, so then it's also a yid. The yid left is not also. Why? Because the yid, once he's left, so he is Masech Das from his from using that, because he's not going to come back on Shabbos. So therefore he's Masech Das from the use of the communal area. So he has no connection to the communal area. Of course, he has the ownership legally, but in practical use, he has no use. Not just he has no use, that he's Masech Das. So he's sort of he's Masech Das from any use. So he's sort of given up the right for that Shabbos. He's given up, so to speak, the right for the Shabbos of using the area. So therefore, since he's given up, so therefore you don't have to take him into account. You can make the area without him. Whereas the guy, he might come back on Shabbos. There's no issue. So therefore, the guy has not given up his right. It's not be Masech Das. Since the guy has not been Masech Das, so therefore you can't make the area till you make the necessary arrangements with him. So that's the opinion of Rabbi Yosef. Rabbi Shimon says, not because the whole brisa was saying that it's talking about if you go in a different city, so then if you go to a different city, so then a yid maybe it doesn't answer because he doesn't, because he won't come back. So therefore, if he's in a different city, the yid will not make it also for the others, and they don't need to take him into account for the Eruv. But Reb Shimon, he says, I feel even if he's in the same city, will still apply the principle of Hesach Hadas, will apply even in the same city. It means he's gone, for instance, he's gone to be Shabbos by his daughter. So Eino Eiser, so already you don't have to take into account when you make an Erev Shikvar Sirdak, because he's already Masir Das, and because he's staying for Shabbos in a different area, so he's Masir Das, and even though he's technically able to come back on Shabbos into that house, but practically he's not going to, so therefore that's good enough, and it's considered as Hesach Hadas, and you don't have to take into account. That's the opinion of So Rav Paskin that Loch is Rabbi Shimon. By the way, all these psukim till now, which contradict the saying of Rabbi Yochanan, they're all based on Rav. So here's another one. Haloch Rabbi Shimon. Haloch is like Rabbi Shimon. 1 second. So Uman Polygalor Rabbi Yehuda. So you have Hoy in the Brisa who argues on Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Yehuda. But Amrit, you said Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Shimon. Haloch Rabbi Shimon. Sorry, Haloch Rabbi Yehuda. The part of the klolim is that if Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon argue, the halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda. So and Rav Paskin's like Rabbi Shimon. So you see, Rav Paskin. So you see, we don't follow the klolim. So again, the Gemara answers the same response. My kusha dilma hochaname hechad itmer itmer hechad lo itmer. Yeah. So the Gemara's response is, we thought these klolim are in the absence of any conclusion which was made by the Beroim. But in a case where the conclusion was made already, so if a conclusion was made, so then of course we follow what the conclusion was of that machlekes. So therefore, there's no kasha to the general cloud. I'm just wondering, as we're learning, I'm just wondering why do we have 3 times the questions and 3 times the same answer? 3 times we ask the question, each time we say, we have a conclusion over there. So therefore, it doesn't prove anything. Maybe the pshat is, I'm just thinking, I didn't look in the Rishonim, but maybe the pshat is that the more, if you have one exception to a cloud, that's okay, fine, there's an exception. When you start having too many exceptions to the cloud, the whole cloud seems to become questionable. So that's where the more rayas you had became questionable. But the Gemara always responded, no. These are all exceptions because, in Echanami, there the conclusion was against the cloud, but it doesn't matter. The cloud still stands because when you made a conclusion, that's a different story. Okay, so now we're going to ask. This is the final question. That is going to be a question. So an oni who's doesn't have food, who doesn't have food. So therefore, it's talking about somebody who is on the way. So he's on the way. So he's an oni. He doesn't have food. Even most Taniyim for Shabbos, they have some food. It's highly unlikely the person shouldn't have food, but certainly the person is traveling. He's in the middle of his travels. He might not have any food with him. So so he's kind of shvisa by being there, without even putting food. He sits down in a certain place and says, "This is my place where I'm kind of shvisa." Okay, so by being there, right? Sorry, I've missed out some words. The snan. Let's start again. This is what they said, that the on is ma'arav barag. That so the oni, without even putting the food, he makes it an eruv tchumen, obviously. Remeir says onu ein lonu elo oni. So it's only an oni. It doesn't have food that he can make the eruv just being there, just being present and be kind of shvisa. But if it's an osher, then he has to, being there is not enough, he has to put some food down. It doesn't make a difference if he has food, doesn't have food, oni osher. The past, the whole thing which we said the past, you don't have to put bread, you can be there and then kind of shvisa by just being there. But the reason why we said you should put bread, to make it the one who has osher, we don't mean here a rich person, I mean the person who has food. To make it easy for him, it doesn't actually have to go. They can send somebody else to put the food down over there, and that'll be sufficient. So the fact that you can put the food is like a kula more than it's not chumra. You have to put food there. Right. So we have this machlokes between Remeir and Rabbi Huda, whether a person who has food, whether it can be ma'arav without food, but just being present at a place where he wants to become a Swiss. And Rav was teaching Rav's son. His name was also Chia. So he was teaching his son, and Rav was present. So he hears him teaching his son. And he said, "Echad oni ve'echad osher," and Rabbi Huda says even an osher can also be ma'arav b'raglo without the food. V'omele Rav. Sayin ba, so Rav tells him finish off. Sayin ba nami, you finish off. Halacha Rabbi Huda. So add on the halacha is like Rabbi Huda. So Rav thought it is important to add to this brayso that the halacha is Rabbi Huda. Now, Tachalomali, why do you need to have to learn that the halacha is like Rabbi Huda? Isn't it a cloud that the Remeir Rabbi Huda, Allah Rabbi Huda? So why do you have to say Allah? Rabbi is telling him you have to say Allah Rabbi Huda. Allah is not Rabbi Huda even if you don't say Allah Rabbi Huda, because that's part of the clothing. So that's lovely. But Amrit Remeir Rabbi Huda, Allah Rabbi Huda. Right. So therefore, we prove that what that these clothing which were about the Remeir Rabbi Huda, Allah Rabbi Huda, and all that they're not correct. So the Gemara says, "My question. This is not a question. It's a good proof. What you said is a good proof. It proves that whoever made this statement and said you should add halacha Rabbi Yehuda means that he doesn't hold the clothing. The person who made the statement that you must add halacha Rabbi Yehuda does not hold the clothing. There's no question about that. It's good proof of that. But it's not a proof in connection to Rabbi Yehuda. My question, Rav less Rav, yeah, I agree with you. That you made your point. Rav does not hold this claim. It's quite obvious. It doesn't hold this claim, and it doesn't hold this claim, but Rabbi Yochanan does hold the claim. And what's the difference? Because we know Ram Rabbi Yochanan and Allah like Rabbi Yochanan. So you've proved that Ram doesn't hold the claim, but still it doesn't affect our halacha because, and maybe the claim are correct, because if Rabbi Yochanan is arguing with Ram, then the halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan. So now we're going to have to try and bring a raya with Rabbi Yochanan getting involved. Let's see. Elamiha. So from over here. The Mahadis now from Milan. Hayavama loy tachlitz loy tisyabim. Yavama should not make chlitza or yibum till 3 months after the husband dies. So she, the Yavama, she is a lady who husband has died and she doesn't, and there's no children between them, and therefore she has to get married to the brother of the husband. So she can't. She has to wait for 3 months because maybe she's pregnant. Okay, so the loitis yabim, the reason why she can't do yibum till 3 months is simple, because she how can she do yibum? She may be pregnant, and if she's pregnant, then there is no mitzvah of yibum. If there's no mitzvah of yibum, she's not allowed to get married to the brother of her husband. It's one darius, except if there's no children, it's a different story. So yibum. Now, what's the problem with chlitza? Why can you not do chlitza before the 3 months? So basically, Rashi explains that you can't do chlitza before 3 months because it may be that she will have a child, and so therefore, if she'll have a child, the chlitza is not effective, because the chlitza is only effective if there's no child. But if she becomes pregnant and has a child, so then the chlitza is not effective. And since the chlitza is not effective, so she will be able to get married to a kohen, because a woman who had chlitza is not permitted to get married to a kohen midrabanan. It's not with the raisa. With the raisa is no isur. Yibum is isur the raisa. Grusha is also with the raisa. But for almona, and if she had chlitza, almona had chlitza, there's no isur the raisa. But it's isur the rabbanan. Nevertheless, but if she makes chlitza and then she has a child, so that means that the chlitza wasn't valid. So that would actually, since it's not valid chlitza, so actually it would permit her to marry a kohen, and she might get married to a kohen, and people will say, look, this person had chlitza, and she married a kohen, without realizing that the chlitza wasn't valid. Rashi speaks a bit more longer about it with more details than I am. I'm saying the kitzer, but that's the point. That we are worried that she will, in a case when the chlitza becomes not, I shouldn't use the word not valid, was an unnecessary chlitza, and therefore no significance. So in such a case, she might get married to Kohen, and people will think she had chlitza and she married a Kohen. So therefore, you should wait just to make sure whether she's pregnant or not. Then you solve yourself getting involved in these problems. Similar also all other women. Lo yinosu, lo yisarsu, they should not get married, and not even get engaged. Well, engaged means over here means kedushin, because they used to make there's a break, make kedushin after the chuppah would be the nisuin, that would be later, and the kedushin would be first. So you shouldn't make either nisuin, not only nisuin, So the Seder was you had Kiddushin, and after the Kiddushin, the Kiddushin was done by a Kenyan, probably most likely a Kesel or Star, a ring or Star, and that was done in Kiddushin, and therefore there was no relationship till Nesuin, when they had the Chuppah. So nevertheless, even though there's no relationship after the Eruvin, nevertheless, so all other women, they should not get married. Not only should they not get married, other women where the husband has died. So other women where the husband has died, they should not get married within the 3 months, till after 3 months. So, and they not only should they not get married, they shouldn't even make kiddushin until they have 3 months. The point being is that it's very important. That why the point of 3 months is that it should be very clear if she gets pregnant, the woman gets pregnant, whose child it is. Because let's say she marries somebody else and then she has a child, so the child will not be known whether he is from the previous husband and it was 9 months, and whether from the second husband and it's only 7 months. Because it could be that a woman should give birth after 7 months and the child will survive. And it's very important to establish who is the father of the child, because later she can get married to a relative. You don't know if you don't know who the father of the child is, then you don't know who his relatives are. So he might think, this one's my father, and get married to people who are actually his relatives. And so there's many issues which can come out of it. So therefore, it's very important to know who his family is, and therefore it's very important to know who is the father of the child. So therefore, we need to have this gap of 3 months in order to establish whether the child is from the first marriage or the second marriage. But the thing is that we are machmir quite a bit over here. Not only is there no nisuin, even no erisin. There's no erisin as well. You can't do erisin, which is kedushin, where there's no relationship. So even that can't be done with 3 months. And then also the people who are into this category is a whole bunch of a number of people, as we'll see. Let me touch it. This issue of waiting 3 months applies to echad psulas, echad bolas. It doesn't make a difference if the woman in the previous marriage she got married as a psula or she was a bu'ula before she got married to the previous marriage. That's not relevant. And as long, in other words, echad almonas, echad grushes. It could be the husband died, it could be a divorced her. You always need that 3 month period. And not only in the source, if they had chuppah even before the chuppah. So let's say they were divorced or the husband died after the kiddushin, with before the nesuin, still they have to wait 3 months. So the Tanakama is machmir very much and makes it it's a very gzeira on all situations. If she was married to somebody, kiddushin, nesuin, even not the kiddushin, nesuin doesn't make a difference. Whoever if then the marriage ceased for some reason because of death or divorce, you have to wait 3 months, and 3 months even to make another kiddushin, never mind of having chuppah, which means relationship. So he takes a very strict view. 3 months is very strict. Rabbi Huda says nesuis is arsu. He says first he disagrees. First of all, says making kiddushin is not an issue. So therefore, even the people who were married before and they had chuppah before, so they had a relationship with the previous husband, they can still make kiddushin now within the 3 month period. What's the problem? She's not going to get pregnant until after the nesuin to the second husband. So therefore, they can make kiddushin. So therefore, he permits even those who had chuppah with the previous husband, they can make kiddushin. But arusais, and those who only had kedushin to the previous husband, those who had kedushin to the previous husband. So then there's no relationship there. So therefore, they can get married. Even the chuppah they can make within 3 months because they were only mikudeshes to the previous husband. So there was no relationship. So there's not going to be an issue of not knowing who the father is. So therefore, they can actually make the chuppah as well within the 3 months. Chutz me'arusa shebehuda, except the arusa shebehuda. So in Yehuda, there they used to permit the mikudeshes like this. We know kalab lebrocha asur lebaila, I think kenido. So kalab lebrocha, if you didn't make the bracha of the bracha, is the brachas are by the chuppah, is the way you make the brachas. The kedushin is not under the chuppah in those days, but the brachas were under the chuppah. So the kalab lebrachas asur lebaila. You made the kinyan, but it's asur lebaila kenido. But in Aruz, in Yehuda, they used to be made permit or the Arusas to have yichud together with the husbands, and because therefore you it's become suspect. So that maybe she maybe there will be a pregnancy or there was a pregnancy. So chutz me'arush Yehuda libi gaspa, because in Yehuda the libi gaspa, and therefore it's not guaranteed that there is no relationship from the Eris. Rabbi says, "Kol anoshim isarsu chutz min ha'halmona mipnei ha'ibul." Rabbi says that all the women can make kedushin, because kedushin again is not going to be a problem of a child, so they can go ahead and make kedushin, except for ha'halmona because of avelas. So in the middle of avelas, so the Amana, she's not allowed to get married, but after the Avelos period has passed, she can get married. So a grusha is no problem. A grusha will never have a problem. Vamrinon, and we learn Rebbe Lozar said, we said Rebbe Lozar, what was the story? The story is that Rebbe Lozar loy olu medrash. He didn't go to the base medrash. Ashkechel Asi, and he met Rav Asi David Kohen. So he didn't didn't hear the shir in base medrash, and he saw Rav Asi. Omalei my omer be medrash. He said, what the same base medrash today? Omalei hochi omer Rabbi Yechon. This is what Rabbi Yechon said. Allah Rabbi Yechon. Rabbi Yechon said Allah Rabbi Yechon. So Rabbi Yechon said Allah Rabbi Yechon. So then this is, I guess, the continuation of the conversation. This is the continuation of the conversation. The Allah is like Rabbi Yechon. He passed Rabbi Yechon. But what about the Tanakama? Tanakama is probably a rabbi. No, Michlal, it must be the Chidah polyglot. The Tanakama who argues and makes all these isurim, that is makes all these isurim, that is a yochid, not a rabbi. So that's why the Allah is Rabbi, because the Tanakama is a yochid, not a rabbi. So the response, I guess, was Ein, yes, and it brings a raya. It brings a raya that the Tanakama is only yochid. The Tanya will that if the kids are, this is all different scenarios where there's no, there's not really much suspicion. It's highly unlikely there was any relationship. So there's a whole bunch of examples, highly unlikely. She was the whole time going to her father. She was writing to the father, and she wasn't much at home. Or she was or she was angry with her husband, or she was zokin, or the husband was old and ill, or she was ill. These are all scenarios where there is highly unlikely that there was a relationship. In some of them, it's impossible there was a relationship. It's impossible there was a pregnancy. Some of them, as we will soon see. But she was a chayla, or akara, she's an akara, or zakena, she's old. There's no question of pregnancies. Ketana, she's a ketana. Va'ailan is, again, she can't become pregnant. She's She doesn't have the simonim. She'ein ru'uya leilet. The kitzer, the husband is in jail. Hamapeles, she actually she actually miscarried. She had a miscarriage. Mrs. Baila after she had a miscarriage after the husband died. So there's no child possible there. That the husband, she had a miscarriage. The kids, it doesn't make a difference. It's a general rule. No, not going into the details of different situations. It's a general. You must wait. Kulam tzrichim happen yom chadoshim. They all have to wait 3 months. Divrei Reb Meir. That's Reb Meir. And Rabbi Yossi matel haaretz will not say biyad. Rabbi Yossi in all all these situations where it's not possible that she is pregnant, in all those situations. So if we know that that's not possible, she's married, then she can go ahead and she can make kedushin and get married right away in all those cases. So the kitzur. So we brought raya that's a das yichidor. So 1 second. So that's a das yochid, the Tanakh, and Rabbi Yochanan Paskin. Then he said Allah is like a basi. Why did he need to say that? We already know. We already know that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yossi, the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi, according to the Klal Rabbi Yochanan. Why does Rabbi Yochanan have to emphasize halacha is like Rabbi Yossi? Let's do it inside. But Lomali, why was it necessary for Rabbi Yochanan to give the psak halacha? Amrit Rabbi Meir Rabbi Yossi, halacha Rabbi Yossi. So we know that halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. So therefore, it proves that he must have not said those klolim. Because if he would have said those klolim, he would not have found necessary to repeat over here and say that halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. The Gemara says, "My kusha, what's the kasha? Dilma lafukim Reb Nachman or Shmuel. Maybe it is necessary to say that because there is a statement from Reb Nachman in the name of Shmuel. What does he say? The Omar halacha Meir b'gzereis. So even though the halacha usually halacha is like Rabbi Yossi against Reb Meir, but we have a klal from Shmuel that halacha Reb Meir b'gzereis. When he makes a gzereis, halacha like Reb Meir. So that the fact to say that it doesn't apply over here, well, it doesn't apply to Rabbi Yossi, whatever. So that's why it's necessary, because since Reb Meir is machmir, we could have thought that even though usually the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi according to the klal, but because of the klal of halacha Reb Meir gzereis, then we do not paskin like Rabbi Yossi. So that's why it was necessary. So we've answered. So there's no proof that. That Rabbi Yochanan never said these quotes. Okay, I think maybe I'll stop over here and we'll do the rest tomorrow.